Around 10 o'clock on the morning of Wednesday, June 20th, 2001, 36-year-old Rusty Yates, a NASA engineer, gets an alarming call from his wife, Andrea Yates, stating that he needs to come home. He asks her what's wrong and she states that she did it. He asks what she means, and she replies, "It's the children." Panic sets in. He asks, "Which one?" And she replies, "All of them." He rushes home from the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas to their Spanish-style 3-bedroom, 2-bath house on Beachcomber Lane that he shared with his wife and 5 children, ranging in ages from 6 months to 7 years. There were police cars and ambulances in the driveway and parked on the street. When he exits his car and hurries towards the door, an officer stops him and explains that he cannot enter the house. After a few minutes, he goes to the window and then the back door, where he screams, "How could you do this?" as he lays his eyes upon an unimaginable scene. Andrea Yates was a high school valedictorian, captain of her swim team, and an officer in the National Honor Society. She completed a 2-year nursing program at the University of Houston and began working as a registered nurse in 1986 at the Anderson Cancer Center. Those who know her stated that she was studious and shy. She didn't seriously date until the age of 23 and suffered a bout of depression over a failed relationship at 24. In 1989, she met Russell Yates at the Sunscape Apartments in Houston, where they both lived. The two moved in together and would be married by April 1993, and announcing that they would seek to have as many babies as nature allowed. Andrea continued to work until their first son, Noah, was born in February 1994. Shortly after Noah's birth, Rusty accepted a job in Florida, and the family relocated to Seminole, where they lived in a small trailer home. Their second son, John, was born in December 1995, followed by their third son, Paul, in September 1997, when they moved back to Houston. They purchased and lived in a customized Greyhound bus with their 3 children. Then came their fourth son, Luke, born in February 1999. By this time, the multiple pregnancies and stress of caring for 4 children were beginning to catch up to Andrea. Like many mothers, she was breastfeeding her newborn every 3 hours and sleeping no more than a few hours a night, if that. On June 16, 1999, when Luke was 4 months old, Andrea called Rusty at work to advise that she was extremely anxious. When he arrived home, he found his wife shaking and barely able to speak. "I need help," she implored. The following day, Rusty took his wife and children to the home of her elderly parents, where he thought that she could rest. That afternoon, she took 40 antidepressant tablets. If her mother hadn't found her and rushed her to the ER, it would have likely killed her. She was transferred to the psychiatric unit at Methodist Hospital, where she was diagnosed with major depressive disorder, single episode, severe. This would mark the beginning of a spiral into a full-blown psychosis that would never adequately be treated. Shortly after, a social worker investigated the Yates situation and visited the home. She described Andrea as unwilling or unable to identify any life stressors. She described Rusty as aware and accepting of his wife's problems and more comfortable calling her condition PPD, postpartum depression, than major depression. His concern was that his wife was struggling with the concept of salvation. The caseworker also stated that the patient and her husband, living in a converted bus with 4 children, was alarming. She was so concerned that she called Houston CPS abuse hotline on June 23, 1999 to report the family's living arrangements and the fact that the patient's husband allowed their toddler to use a power drill. However, 7 days later, CPS sent a letter stating that they declined to investigate. The caseworker elevated a letter with her concerns to the Houston Police Department, which